And so all of a sudden we started getting into Walmart and Target and Costco and all these places. Oh God, we need a strategy. That's where they brought in trade marketing. It's like, okay, now we have this business. We need a strategy for how we're going to manage Walmart versus Costco versus Target versus all these customers, because certainly those customers all want to be special. They all want to be special, whether it's special products, special pricing, whatever it is. And you have to figure out, how can I make all my retailers feel a little special by giving them different things? That's where trade marketing comes in. Marketing is great at telling consumers how to buy product. Trade marketing is the bridge between taking that great marketing to consumers and actually putting it in a buyer's hand at a Walmart, a Target, a Costco.
Thank you for joining the Missing Half podcast, where we're discovering what's missing in manufacturing and B2B marketing. Today, I have a very special guest with me, Ron Evans. Ron is a sales and marketing leader with over 25 years in the consumer goods industry. He's worked across a wide range of categories, such as power tools, building materials, and consumables. He's led teams at companies ranging from $25 million startups to $17 billion global brands. Ron brings a unique perspective from roles spanning trade marketing, product development, and national account leadership. Ron, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and your guests.
Well, thank you. And so you're with Rishaba Industries currently, another major manufacturer that is making inroads into the U.S. market. Maybe tell us a little bit about that opportunity and what you're working with, and then we're going to jump into Ron Evans and what's happening in the market.
Yeah, when you talk about Rishaba, it's kind of like the story of what's old is new. Rishaba has been a manufacturer, the family has been manufacturing for over 55 years. They built one of the greatest well-known brands in India. And, a few years ago, they decided to sell the company, put it private. And then they sold a lot of their stock because they had the vision that where the money is for an Indian manufacturer is really not in India and making products for Indian people. It's really Europe, North America. Those are where the markets are more lucrative. And so, they built 3 state-of-the-art manufacturing facilities to supply those markets.
When Ron, you're bringing a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience, and a rich history in the market. And one of the things I'd like to talk about today is maybe let's just start with a little bit of your background and your professional experience that has led you to where you are today.
Yeah, I've had an interesting journey. I mean, I started with a really small manufacturer that made power tool accessories for Home Depot and Ace and all those places. And then my first job in sales was actually, I sold Rainbow vacuums. I was 20 years old, and I answered an ad and I said, hey, I could probably sell a few of these. And the first day I made $900. I'm like, maybe sales is something I'm good at. So yeah, I've worked through a huge different array of companies. So, I live in Bentonville, Arkansas. So I first came down here for Walmart, running a $280 million business. Since then I've done, private label out of a company out of Canada that did business with, Walmart, Target, Costco, and a few others. But, it's been an interesting journey. I tell everybody, like, if you want me to help you sell something, as long as it's not food and beverage, I can probably sell it for you, because I've sold everything from tents and hydration to Lysol disinfectant.
Love it. So one of the things I like to speak to is young entrepreneurs and young people who are trying to get started. And one of the things I think that is missing from a lot of young people's repertoire, or like that job before the job, is door-to-door sales. And certainly door-to-door sales isn't all it is, but even over the phone sales or in-person retail sales. How much did you learn from, and I've done it too, right? I did a lot of sales as a young man over the counter. How much did you learn from getting kicked in the teeth, because there's no other way to describe it, over and over again until you reach success? Like, what did you learn from that experience?
It's doing those types of sales for somebody that's going to go on a career and be in that field is really invaluable. You learn, when you're doing, something like rainbow vacuums, which I actually sold rainbow vacuums at one point when I was like 20 years old. What it learns is how to deal with people, how to talk to people, how to deal with people, understand body language and those things. I've taken a million body language courses because what you say and what you mean are two different things when I look at your body language versus what your words are. And
Sure.
so those things are really invaluable. It's no different than, a Reckitt Benckiser or a P&G that goes out and gets, MBAs or master degree people. And the first thing they do is they make them go work in a store.
Sure.
They don't hire them to be analysts. They don't hire them to be managers. They hire them to say, okay, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to spend a year in the stores and you're going to be stacking displays and making sure our products are on the shelf. And that's the way you learn. It's a progression. All of this is a progression. And, I was lucky enough to have the right line of progressions to get to where I am today.
No, that's great. One of the things that you've brought to like the conversation here, which we have not spoken to anybody about, is that trade marketing hybrid role.
Yeah.
And could you talk about that? And, I think that's more familiar in really large Fortune 500 or multi-billion-dollar companies, and it is not prevalent or can't be afforded by mid-market companies. Could you talk a little bit about that role, please?
Yeah, it's an interesting role. It's let's call it the conduit between marketing and what all the marketing folks want to do and what the sales folks can really actually accomplish. So you're a little bit marketing, you're a little bit sales, you're a little bit shopper marketing, because certainly if you put tactics around it, it makes it easier for the salespeople to sell. But it is a job that I think that smaller companies really need to embrace. I work for a recent company that I made the suggestion, like, hey, we've changed our strategy and the way we're going to, hold marketing and brand verticals. We need trade marketing. We need that conduit in between. So I think there's a lot of mid to small companies that don't utilize that position because they don't understand it.
Sure.
P&G, Clorox, Reckitt Benckiser, those guys understand it because they understand like, hey, we've got these really affluent people over in marketing, and somebody needs to kind of ground them. And what can we sell?
Sure.
It's great. It's great. You have all these ideas to talk to the consumer, but if I can't get into Walmart or Target or Costco or Sam's Club, it doesn't make any difference. So I do believe that that's a position that is, underutilized and understood by, kind of like, let's call it the mid to lower, volume manufacturers in the world. And certainly manufacturers outside of the US have no understanding of this concept at all.
Okay, that's interesting. So, one of the things I think that may be missing for like the middle market, and let's assume that all of them don't have the budget to afford this position. That still doesn't mean they shouldn't, like in an EOS model, create a seat for that position and make sure that someone's sitting in it and advocating, like, and even if it's playing that role. Right. It's in a meeting like, hey, you know what? I don't really have a dog in this fight today, but I'm going to advocate as a trade marketing professional and try and be that conduit. Do you think there would be value in that, or at least of getting a fractional trade marketing person or somebody to advocate for them?
I think there's always going to be value in that position, because it is literally, I would call trade marketing the common sense of the organization, because marketing people are great at marketing, and they also market to upper management what they want to do. And there has to be somebody in the room that says, hey, common sense wise, I understand what's going on in the sales perspective and what our customers are saying and what our salespeople are saying. And I understand what the marketing folks want to do. We have to find that path between those two things to execute what we want to do as an organization. So it's invaluable. And I think that there's a lot of organizations that kind of paint over that position, or they don't have it at all because they just don't understand what the need is. Hey, I got marketing, I got sales. What do I need? A conduit in between. It's an important thing. And the bigger you get as a corporation, the more important that position becomes.
Yeah, because you have bigger silos, you have bigger entrenchment. Right?
Absolutely.
Ron, if you were going to give advice to a middle market manufacturer who doesn't have the bandwidth for this, but needed to do the research to make sure they understood the information that a good trade marketer would like evaluate? I mean, is it voice of customer research? How would you tell them to go get that information so that they're providing that kind of sounding board for marketing and sales to bounce off of?
Yeah, to be honest, it has to be a human being that actually analyzes it, because everything
Got
you
it.
just said, market research, consumer feedback, all those things play a part of that.
Sure.
So it literally needs to be a person. It's very difficult to do it. Now, there are certain things you can do. So, there's different software out there that can, you can go on blasted something out to the marketplace. Consumers will give you feedback and all those things. There's basis testing, which, I send a bunch of products to consumers and all those things. But at the end of the day, it is literally, I have a good concept for the consumer. How do I package that to a retailer? And if you're asking your salespeople to do it versus a trade marketer, the problem with that is channel management. So I can have a great consumer story and I go, all right, I'm going to send it to my Walmart guy, my Target guy, my Costco guy, my Sam's Club guy, and my Myers guy, and all these different salespeople, and they go and sell the program. What's your price strategy? How are you going to channel manage? What are the different product sizes you're going to put in those different retailers to give them a little bit of exclusivity? How are you going to tell Walmart that Target's price is the same as yours? You can't. All those things have to be managed by a person. They have to make those decisions and then take them back to management and say, here's how we're going to manage. When I was at Reckitt Benckiser and ran Walmart, I was in a Power of One team, which is for Reckitt Benckiser, which is marketing and trade marketing. And they all get together once a month for, 10, 12 hours and they talk about the business. Sure. I was the first salesperson in the world to be in that meeting. And the reason I was in that meeting was because they knew, like, we're going to make a plan that doesn't just work for Walmart. It's going to work for everybody. How do we grow Walmart, which is at the time, certainly Reckitt's largest customer in the world. It wasn't even close. How are we going to grow Walmart, but still grow Target and Kroger and Safeway and all these other customers? And we came up with a plan to be able to grow Walmart faster because they're important, but also keep growth in all of our other customer bases. And that is a trade marketing function. I did that strategy because I was in trade marketing right before that job. Right before I took over $280 million at Reckitt, I was in trade marketing and I understood like the need to understand how to manage all the different channels and make sure that we're going to be successful in dollar and club and mass and grocery all at the same time. And that is something that marketers can't do, salespeople can't do. It's the trade marketing people there in the middle that can have the vision to be able to do that.
If a company doesn't have that trade marketing role, do you end up with the tail wagging the dog because you have a product and a price, and then you have salespeople and the sales organization goes off and kind of creates a strategy on the fly with the buyers at these large organizations? And then, I mean, you can still move volume, right? You can still, certainly. But at the end of the day, it's 2 years later. You've got pricing all over the board, packaging, distribution, like it's chaos.
Yes,
which for a startup, that's probably where it is anyway, because they just need cash flow. But whenever you have established brands with major production lines and commitments, you would probably want to avoid that as much as possible. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll give a great example of a startup that went from, kind of clawing their way through things and trying to get business all the way to now they have to have this trade marketing position. Shark Ninja. 20 years ago, Shark Ninja was nobody. They had some infomercials with a little bullet blender, and that was it. Today, they are now one of the 5 most recognized companies as far as innovation in all sorts of categories: cookware, small appliances. They've even got into beverage and hydration products. And that was a company that basically said, hey, we have this cool little idea and we're going to get it manufactured somewhere over in China. and we're going to be great at marketing. And then all of a sudden they said, we're so great at marketing. Now we can actually get into retailers. And so all of a sudden we started getting into Walmart and Target and Costco and all these places. Oh God, we need a strategy. That's where they brought in trade marketing. It's like, okay, now we have this business. We need a strategy for how we're going to manage Walmart versus Costco versus Target versus all these customers, because certainly those customers all want to be special. They all want to be special, whether it's special products, special pricing, whatever it is. And you have to figure out, how can I make all my retailers feel a little special by giving them different things? That's where trade marketing comes in. Marketing is great at telling consumers how to buy product. Trade marketing is the bridge between taking that great marketing to consumers and actually putting it in a buyer's hand at a Walmart, a Target, a Costco.
No, I love that. And I think that that's a neat perspective. And that's something that's been missing in our conversations here at The Missing Half, is looking at that key role. I want to switch gears here a little bit. And you're bringing products into the U.S. So certainly there's a difference between domestically manufactured products and bringing stuff from overseas. What are some of the common challenges you see manufacturers facing when they're trying to distribute directly into the U.S., where they don't have like a major U.S. counterpart, or they're not just components manufacturing or product manufacturing for an established brand?
Yeah, there's to come to the U.S. market, there's a lot of challenges. There's, when you're looking for employees, it's even creating something as far as like a shell company in the U.S. to have U.S. based employees is not easy. It is not an easy task. Technically right now, despite the fact that I'm an employee, technically in the United States, I'm a consultant. Because it was easier to start me as a consultant and then build an LLC and all those things. So, I mean, that's one thing, but I mean, taxes are a nightmare. Trying to figure out U.S. taxes. If I'm exporting this, how much do I pay to India versus how much do I have to pay in the United States? How does that all work? That's a very challenging dish. But the biggest challenge is culture. If you're a manufacturer outside the United States, trying to figure out the culture. And the example is my company. They tried for a few years to break in the U.S. market, and despite the fact that they broke in and got some customers, they weren't the right customers, and they had to walk away from those businesses. And so it was a challenge for them, and it's really about finding somebody in that spot that can actually tell you what's going on. It's not about for my position, I sell every day, and I'm talking to executives at Walmart and different places to make sure that we're getting sales done. But my biggest job is informing my counterparts over in India. Here's what's going on in the market. Here's what's happening. Here's the difference between when Walmart comes to our factory and Target comes to our factory. Here's the differences. And believe it or not, a factory audit from Walmart and Target are vastly different. And so having somebody in the U.S. that understands that has the experience across all those retailers to understand, like, hey, when you bring Walmart in, here's the questions they're going to ask. When you bring Target in, they're going to ask a whole different set of questions. That is important. And that's kind of the way forward. But I mean, really any manufacturer that has the right product or right idea has an opportunity to break into this market, because there's, I'm just one person. There's a lot of folks that can help you do that. I mean, I employ Marshall, which is one of the oldest rep agencies in the country, 50 years of experience. They've got 150 different clients that they sell to. That was one thing that I brought immediately to the table, because I knew I can't sell 50 different retailers personally. Now I can be there for the Walmart and the Targets and the Costco's, but if you're talking about Fred Meyer or some of these, I can't be there all the time. So, it's finding the right partners. And if you're an overseas manufacturer, finding the right person to run it or the right partners to run it with you is paramount.
What role do you see marketing play in this process? Because like when you see, I mean, culturally, we've seen differences from offshore companies trying to break into the market, and some of them just don't get it.
Yeah.
And it feels off, and it feels like, even just like an example, if you're going to show transportation assets as part of your marketing, the lorries or trucks in Asia and in Europe are much, much different than in the US. And people don't relate. Oh,
Yeah.
that's weird, right? And no, it's perfectly normal to them. But in the States, it's not a Ford, it's not a Dodge, whatever. And that's kind of a very hyperbolic example. But what role do you see marketing play in success or failure, and how quickly they adapt to the US culture of communication?
So I will tell you this, the best companies that are overseas manufacturers that have their own brands here, their marketing is here. It's not overseas.
Sure.
One of my board of directors is a designer by trade. I mean, he has an MBA in design, right? So he loves to design products. And he was the first one to tell me, as we come in with our own brand in the United States, we're going to get US designers. I can't have Indian designers designing US product. We don't know what you want. We don't know the lines you want. We don't know the functionality you want. And so for anybody that's manufacturing overseas, whether it's a freelance person or it's you hire somebody on staff, get a US designer to help with those designs, because at the end of the day, you can have the greatest design in the world, but if Americans look at it and go, I don't know what the hell that is, it doesn't matter.
It's not going to sell.
You can make the greatest looking frying pan in the world, and if Americans go, I don't like it, then you can't sell it in the United States. So, having people. So, I mean, from my standpoint, I spend a lot of time at shows like the Pantone book. What are the trend colors? I spend time with PPG. What are the trend colors? What are people talking about? I look at, all this sorts of different trends to try to figure out 12 months from now, 18 months from now, what does my cookware color need to be?
Sure.
What does my hydration need to look like? What are the new things we need to do? And in order to actually take that from thought into design, you need a US designer. And so I would recommend to anybody I don't care if you're manufacturing in Vietnam or you're manufacturing in China or any place else, get a US designer if you want to sell your own brand. And I would even recommend getting a US designer, even if you just want to sell private label.
Sure.
Yeah. Private label is easy. You think, I'll just take the current design. I'm going to price it out and tell this customer it's $5.40 for this pan. What big retailers want today, even from private label manufacturers, is give me some ideas.
Sure.
What's your ideas? Give me some designs. Give me something new. Give me a different color, a different look of the product. What are the consumers going to gravitate towards? So, 20 years ago, private label was just like, give me this at this, and I need it at this price. Now, private label manufacturers, whether you're in the US, you're based in Vietnam, China, Taiwan, or India, we all need to come to the table with ideas and how to move that business forward, even if it's a retailer private label brand.
Yeah, it seems like 20 years ago, it was a knockoff game. Hey, can you build something that looks like this 40% cheaper? And that was the way we were sourcing overseas, and that was the game. Now, that's not good enough. You have to have uniqueness quickly, because whether it's because of the internet and people are aware of trends more quickly or whatever, you can't just copy everything and have like a 24 to 36 month lag on those private labels coming in. Because like you said, now like cookware and your water bottles and everything, they have to be stylish.
Yeah.
It's not a utilitarian thing anymore. It's got to look sharp.
No, it's I mean, especially when you talk about hydration, that is a fashion brand now. That's fashion. It's, you can blame Stanley on making it fashion, right?
Yes. I predict that, and it probably already exists, the AI will have like the runways where the new hydration units will like prance down the aisle like the models would with all of the new fashion, because it's that much of a forward thinking design.
Yeah. I would tell you this, private label manufacturer of hard goods need to look back 15 years and look at what the private label food industry did. Because the private label food industry innovated. Now, we all know like the, StarKist, the wrapper, instead of the can, that was created by a private label company for Walmart.
Okay.
That wasn't created by Sunkist. That was created by a private
Okay.
label company in Walmart. So Walmart's own brand was the first one in those bags. And
Okay.
now every
Interesting.
Bumblebee, Starkist, every brand that's in tuna has those bags. So there's ways to innovate in private label that can actually not only accelerate your business, but you can also decide, hey, I've innovated so much, maybe I should start my own brand.
Got it.
That's a kind of a doorway every company has to try to figure out. Like, hey, I'm a private label manufacturer, but I'm stringhold in a lot of ways. So do I start my own brand? And innovation is a part of that. So if you're a private label manufacturer and all of a sudden you got 3 innovations, hey, you should start your own brand.
Sure.
Because you're ready to do it. You have innovations, you have patents, you have these things. So there's always opportunity for small, medium range manufacturers, new ideas. And I always say innovation, people think of it like, oh, it's a new product. No, it's not a new product. It can be a new way to manufacture a product better. It can be a new way of selling that product, marketing that product. Ninja, I keep going back to it because I love the company. Ninja's not special. They're just really smart at marketing. Sure. They don't have any unique products. Their cookware sets there's 20 of them on the market that are exactly the same. Their appliances, there's 15 options that are exactly the same, but they market well.
Sure.
And they've done a great job at it over the last 25 years. And now, they're one of the fastest growing companies in this industry.
I think that's a natural pivot to another topic, which is it feels like there's a lot of haves and have-nots when it comes to brand and positioning and good marketing. Could you maybe speak to that and, maybe why it's dangerous for a company to launch just based on quality or price? Because those feel like tenuous pillars upon which to, like foundations upon which to build.
Yeah, I mean, quality and price can always be matched. Period. Yep. I used to work for one of the largest cookware companies in the world, and guess what? People match us on quality and price. The biggest thing that company was lacking is I don't have a brand identity. That is the most important thing. If you're going to launch a brand, I don't care if it's in food, beverage, cookware, camping, I don't care what category it is. What is your brand message? Who do you want to represent? And it has to be very focused. So if you look at somebody like Red Bull, they've got the bull. They know what they're doing. They're talking about energy. Red Bull makes you fly. They tell you exactly what they are as a company.
Sure.
And then certain people will gravitate towards that and certain people won't, but you're going to have an audience because certain people will gravitate towards that messaging. So, there's so many companies out there. And I mean, since I'm in cookware and I've been in cookware for the last few years, I think about them. There's a dozen companies out there that have good products. I don't know what their brand stands for. No idea. They have no brand identity. I sit there and look at Ninja sitting next to him on the shelf and go, Ninja has a brand identity. We know what Shark Ninja is. They're innovative. They're bold. They do all these things. And it makes you want to gravitate towards that product. There's so many brands out there today that just don't have an identity. Lysol and Clorox have an identity. We kill bacteria, germs. That's our job. So everybody knows if I buy one of those products, that's the job it's going to do.
Sure.
You don't tell somebody this is what you're going to get and consistently give it to them, then your brand doesn't mean anything because there's another dozen out there that can do the same thing. And there's no emotional connection from the consumer.
So whenever we look at that brand and so the successful companies are establishing that they're planting their flag, right? And we know who they are, what they stand for. How important is it though also for brands to evolve over time and like to really innovate? Because certainly, like you said in the Shark example, who they were when they started, their first successes, then allowed them to innovate and pivot to expanded platforms, more merchandise, etc. How important is it for them to innovate? And I'm not talking about like a new manufacturing machine or whatever, but like really innovate the product line, the positioning, the brand over time.
it's always important you have to find ways to revitalize a brand. And the older the brand is, the more you have to work on it. And I'll give a great example. Reckitt Benckiser or Lysol. Lysol lost Lysol for like 30 years was the leader in cleaning. There was nobody even close to us. And then sometime around 2010, Clorox actually took over.
Sure.
And so everybody at Reckitt was like, what the hell just happened? And it was because we weren't innovating. And it wasn't that we weren't innovating in new products, as we weren't innovating in our old products.
Okay.
Lysol disinfectant spray has been around for 100 years. We completely changed our whole marketing strategy for how we sold Lysol disinfectant spray. Why? We needed to. Because we had sold it one way for 50 years. And it was time to innovate the way we did it. And within 36 months, we took back over share leadership from Clorox nationally. And it was literally an innovation in the way we talked about the product. Not the way we made it, not the way we manufactured it, not the way it looked, not the packaging, the way we talked about it in our media, social media, and all of our different outlets where we talk to consumers. That was the key.
Today's episode of the Missing Half podcast is brought to you by 50 Marketing, a full-service agency built for B2B and manufacturing companies. Our team provides tailored strategies and services, from branding and websites to content, social media, and video, to help you grow with clarity and purpose. Visit 50marketing.com to schedule a free consultation. So, one of the things I think that is important today for us to recognize, and that a lot of our audience, which is more in the manufacturing, industrial, and B2B space, could take away from this conversation, is how important it is to test messaging, to A/B test, to really do like voice of customer, to really understand what's happening in the market, because that has been a natural motion in consumer products, in direct to consumer distribution for a long time. But when we think about B2B manufacturing, that is new. And part of the problem is they just don't have the sample size theoretically that you would because every household needs Lysol, right? But what have you seen when you think about the rise of like digital testing, like throwing stuff out on TikTok, Instagram, whatever, seeing what gets feedback, hooks, packaging, positioning, those type of things, and how's that impacting decision making?
No, I mean, it's a new world where you can do things like that very quickly, very cheaply, and get feedback right from your audience. When I started, 25 years ago, it was basis testing. So I take 3 boxes with 3 different types of products in it, and I put it in front of like 25 consumers, and I get their feedback. And then if you do that enough times, then you go, okay, this is the one that we should launch. Today you can do that almost in real time.
Sure.
With the digital media, you can do it in real time and get feedback on a wide variety of things. I would also caution every single manufacturer, when you find a concept on .com that you think works, you still need to do something like a basis test, because you need to put it in the real world. Everything looks great on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. It all looks fantastic, but give me a box that you want me to buy and put it on a shelf in a store and see if I want to buy it. But the digital realm can actually save hundreds of thousands of dollars,
sure,
if not millions, depending on the size of company you are, in getting at least down to the right 2 or 3 concepts that you want to launch. And then you go to your more classic stuff. Before it was, all right, I throw 3 out of bases. None of those worked. I throw 3 more out. I can throw 100 different concepts out on Facebook today and go, hey, these 3 seem to resonate. Let's test these 3. And so I think it's a combination of the old style, but utilize the tools of today, which is, social media and very cheap ways to get things in front of people and get their reaction, and then figure out, okay, I've narrowed my focus down to this 2 or 3 products. Now let's go do a full basis testing and see which one of those concepts we think is going to be successful.
I think that's one of the things that's really been missing in B2B is that willingness to test. In the B2B and manufacturing market, we're so, I think we get wrapped up in this is our idea, this is our invention, and we want to take it to market. We fall in love with it and we work really, really hard and we invest hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in branding, marketing, the sales team, sales training, trade show booths, like the whole life cycle. And then we see if it works and it's accepted by the market. As opposed to why don't we step back and do some testing, at least see if anybody gives a rip about this, who anybody's going to care. And so I think that's something that's been missing in manufacturing and B2B, and even in mid-market D2C and small market startups, challenger brands that don't have the budget. They get so excited about these ideas that they're not humble enough to accept the fact that it might fail or should fail because it's not going to work.
Yeah,
what do you see about that?
If you go back to your early 2000s, that's even big companies like a Reckitt or a P&G, that's how they launched. We got this idea, we're going to launch it, and then we're going to put so much marketing behind it that enough people will buy it, we can make money. That doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work. I mean, that day ended probably around 2015. That where you could still hey, I'm just going to launch this and I'm going to spend $1 million in marketing and I'll still make enough money to make it make sense. One of my biggest competitors, back in my older days was SC Johnson. SC Johnson was great at that.
Oh my.
They would launch a product. They would spend a ton of marketing. They would go into every retailer, tell them, here's all the marketing we're spending on this. And the retailer's like, well, we have to take it. And then 18 months later, it's off the shelves because it didn't work. But SC Johnson still made money because all the retailers took it in. Enough people bought it. Even with the $40 million in marketing they put against it, they made enough money to say, yeah, it was a success. That is not the day anymore. There's too much data out there with social media. There's too much data with the internet, Google, Chrome, whatever you want to do, Edge. There's everything's out there. So you can't go to market with a product that consumers don't want and fool them into buying it anymore. You can't do it. There was a long time you could fool people into buying a product, at least the first time. You can't do that anymore. You can't do it anymore. So you have to have a solid basis of, I believe this product is going to work because consumers told me it's going to work.
When I think that just shows us how the market has become so efficient that it doesn't allow brute force to overcome common sense or good products. And I think the next wave of that is right on top of us with AI, because AI is also going to sort out another layer of brute force or irrationally exuberant effort from manufacturers and large multinationals, where upstarts, challenger brands can penetrate those markets because they have a better mousetrap. They have something that's better, that's faster, smarter, cheaper, whatever. And so I think it's interesting to see that pivot. And I think the B2B and industrial space is still lagging in that adoption. We still take products to market and we still launch them and put all kinds of money behind them and then wonder, is it going to work? Which we should invert it completely and model more after the D2C.
Oh, I'll do you one better. There's products that companies launch that they know aren't going to work. But they're going to launch them anyways. I hate to beat up my old company because I love working there, but Reckitt Benckiser, when they launched the Lysol kitchen gadget, which was basically a hand soap / dish detergent that you put in your counter that you just go like this and it automatically dispensed. I told them from day one, that will not work. This is not going to work in the American market. If you have a dishwasher, you're not using much dish detergent. If you don't have a dishwasher, you're doing what my mom did and you're squeezing a bunch of it into the thing. You're making a bunch of suds. You put the dishes in, then you wash them. I was like, nobody's going to go underneath this thing for like one little squirt 100 times to wash the dishes. It just doesn't work. But they launched it because we needed to launch something. So yeah, I mean, when it gets into the end of the day, it's, certainly smaller companies, startups, mid-majors, they can't risk doing something like that.
Yes.
They can't risk that.
It'll sink them.
Yeah. So it is better spent time figuring out what does the consumer want. Don't spend time at like, I had this great idea. Okay, great. Does your idea come to the consumer in a way that the consumer goes, yeah, I would buy that. I would buy that. And so, yeah, you have to be more judicial. Certainly startups, smaller companies have to be more judicial the way you do things. So you have to do the consumer research, not just social media, because social media gives you one answer, but when you put it in
Sure.
real life, it can give you another answer. Social media is great to narrow it down. Narrow it down like, hey, I've got these 3 concepts. Now I'm going to narrow it down to these 2 concepts and we'll see what happens. But then put it into basis testing or whatever your industry does. Because at the end of the day, a small company can't miss on a Lysol hand soap gadget. You can't.
Sure.
Millions of dollars worth of miss that you can't afford. So you have to find out, does my product resonate with the consumer?
So, Ron, this has been a fascinating conversation. I think we've learned a lot about what's missing that we can apply from the D2C channels when we're looking at bringing products directly from manufacturers overseas into the U.S. and this trade marketing role. Could you share? We're all about shameless plugs. Could you share where people can get in contact with you? And this will be in all of the footers and all of the things where we post it, as you're launching Rishaba Industries new products into the market, where they can find you and connect with you.
Yeah, so I'm based in Benville, Arkansas. I can throw a stone and hit Walmart's building, which is sometimes a good thing, sometimes a bad thing. But
Sure.
my email's really easy: Ronald.Evans@Rishaba, RISHABA .in, not .com, .in. And I'm more than happy to, talk to your guests about, business in general. Certainly would love to if we had opportunities that came through that. But I'm readily available. I work a weird day because India's 10 and a half hours ahead of me. So I'm usually working by 6:30 and still working at 12:30 and take a nap in the middle of the day. So I have an interesting day. So I'm pretty much a 24-hour guy. But no, Rishaba is, I would put them in the innovation category. They didn't innovate
Sure.
product. They don't have any innovative product that's different than anything you can buy today. They innovated in manufacturing. They did the manufacturing better. So more robotics, more automation, less labor, better prices. So I would tell all of your guests, there's 1,000 ways to innovate in the United States. Ninja didn't do anything special, but they're great marketing. Rishaba didn't make any new products, but we're winning because of great manufacturing and innovations in manufacturing the way we do it. And then also you can come up with a new product. So there's a lot of ways to innovate and be a part of this industry. And it doesn't matter if you're a 100-year-old company like Reckitt Benckiser trying to revitalize Lysol, or you're a new startup that just figured out a way to make tuna fish in a little packet.
Sure.
All of them have place, and they always will, I believe. I always will believe that in the United States, but it really in North America in total, as well as South America, you're always going to, if you can come up with the idea, there's always going to be a market. The idea doesn't need to be a product. It could be a way to manufacture, a way to distribute it, a way to market it. There's always going to be room for somebody who has the best idea.
No, I love that, Ron. And I think that's an encouragement because we're also part of our follower group or audience is certainly young entrepreneurs that are establishing startups, that are creating challenger brands, who are looking for that next edge to break into the market. And I think we're going to continue to see some giants fall to upstarts. The creator economy, the speed of the internet, AI, there's going to be a lot of disruption, and recognizing that there's more than one way to win is so very important.
I mean, you can look at that through the last 12 years, there's been 260 startups in food alone that have been bought by Tyson, by all the big food brands. I mean, like Kraft.
Sure.
There's really only like 6 or 7 food brands in this country. Right? They all own everything. But there's been like 120 or 130 startups that those big companies bought because they said, oh my God, we need to get into this. They
Sure.
found a way in, they made money. And let's face it, they probably cashed out with a lot of money too when, Kraft or Pepsi or somebody else bought them.
Well, and I think that's the name of the game in a lot of startups, especially in food and beverage, is they lose money forever. But they prove a concept, they get volume, and then a major platform buys them that has all the distribution, has the economies of scales in manufacturing, and can get placement, right? Can deal with the slottage and all those other challenges that occur in the market. And now, Ron, this has been a fascinating conversation. I've really enjoyed it. And I just want to thank you for sharing your experience here on The Missing Half.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate the time. And like I said, any of your listeners are more than welcome to reach out to me at any time for questions. I'm one of the things I love to do most is, kind of teach people about this industry and, give my perspective and how you can be successful as an individual in this industry.
Love it. Well, Ron, thank you so much. And we'll talk again soon.
All right. Take care. Thanks.
So thank you for joining the Missing Half podcast, where we're discovering what's missing in manufacturing and B2B marketing. Like, share, subscribe. Have a great day.